Hello, everyone, and welcome to Living Out Loud with Laura. I am so excited for y'all to join me today. And on this episode, I have my friend Julie who is joining us live. This is the very first time I have somebody coming on and being brave enough to show their face. Hi, Julie. Welcome to the show.
Thank you so much. I really love being on your show. I think this is the fourth time, so thank you for inviting me.
I think it is too. And it might be the first time for some people because this is a brand new platform. We're now on YouTube with video. So I think it might be a great time to kind of remind people, how do we actually know each other? And I think it would be great for them to hear that from you. So why don't you go ahead and introduce yourself and then explain how you know me?
Well, I actually met Laura online. We are mothers of LGBTQ kids. I won't get into the details, but we
Nope,
kind
that's
of
okay.
met through that community,
Yeah.
that parent community, and our friendship grew from there. My background's a little different from Laura's. I come from more of a conservative religious background. I have gone to much more progressive spaces since you know who came along about
Yep.
10 years ago. And Laura comes from a military background, and she has progressed in her understandings and views as well, because the military can be a culturally conservative place.
Oh,
So
absolutely.
we've come from those backgrounds, but we have pretty much ended up in a very similar place, not exactly, but definitely more progressive and more woke. I guess you'd say more
Yeah.
socially aware of what's going on. And it's impossible, in my opinion, to not see it if you're paying attention. It's impossible. So that's my opinion. But anyway.
I agree with you. And something I want to point out in what you just said is yes, I am very not religious at all. Like,
Right.
that is not my jam. However, I do not have lack of respect for people that are happy with their faith and pursue their faith. My only problem with religion comes
Mhm.
when people decide that their beliefs and their faith somehow is what I have to do with my body and myself. That's where
Right.
I have a problem. Like, my favorite color is teal. Your favorite color doesn't have to be teal, and it's okay.
Yeah,
It's okay.
exactly. Hmm. Well, and I just to I'm going to make this clear about myself, because even though I came from a conservative religious background, when fascism hit the church hard, of course, I think these undercurrents have been in American Christianity,
Hmm.
or American religion for a long time. These undercurrents have been there. But when it went full throttle, and I would say that was probably definitely during COVID, but maybe even somewhat before that, I had an awakening that was brutal.
Yeah.
And I saw what was going on. This was before January 6th.
Hmm.
I really got a rude awakening. And it was actually the best thing, because what it did is it brought me to LGBTQ affirmation. It brought me to a very progressive place in my just understanding of God and my relationship with people. And I have come to the conclusion that the ideology of the far right,
Hmm.
religious right, radical right, there's all kinds of names for them, is completely antithetical, or the opposite of what I've always understood a vibrant faith in all religions to be: to love your neighbor as yourself. And that is what I see desperately um, lacking in the far right, the religious right. They have politicized certain key hot button points over decades, not just recently, to have control over the country. It's minority control, and that is not exactly the same as Nazi Germany, but it's the same type of ideology that elected Hitler and ushered in Nazism. And we are experiencing not the same thing in the United States, but definitely a variation of it right now.
And that's something that I want to make clear also, because yes, it is not the exact same thing. And when people are using um old Germany as an example, it's because there are definitely some similarities. We're not saying
Right,
it's 100% exactly the
right.
same, but we are saying what we see in that we learned in history are very similar happenstances to what we're seeing now.
Yes.
And, I used to really wonder, like, I used to think, gosh, it was so sad that, East and West Germany were separated and you'd have families over here and families over there. And it must be so horrible to be away from your family because of this divide. And I didn't understand that was actually probably by the time they actually ended up putting up that wall, what it was is we believe this way, y'all believe this way, and go stay in your corners. And maybe if you have family that's over on that side of the wall, it's because you don't believe and agree with their moral compass any longer.
Mm-hmm.
And one of the things that just astonishes me is the fact that I have some people in my life that I have always grown up respecting and looking up to, and really thinking they were teaching me wonderful principles. And I truly believe that I learned wonderful principles. I ended up having to put a mirror to my face at one point in time and say, "Did you really learn them, or can
Yeah,
you
me
just
too.
spout them without following them?" That was
Exactly.
the
Me
hard
too.
part, and
Yeah.
it was actually putting that mirror up to the face. But what
Mm-hmm.
I think scared me the most is that once I realized I was wrong, and I guess maybe this is my tism, I'm a little neurospicy here. So maybe it's my
Okay.
tism that I thought once I saw the facts and I had the facts and I could show it to other people and say, "Look, you see this, you see where this was wrong," that other people would be like, "Oh my gosh, yes, I see."
I wish.
But that is not the reality. And
Exactly.
that that's the part that I think is the hardest, where you're like, but wait, like, and I will say, and I want to say this because I know how hard I don't understand their side. That's how they don't understand my side, which
Yeah.
just seems crazy to me in and of itself, but it's
Hmm.
true. And
Yeah.
I want to say that on both sides of anybody having to separate themselves from family, nobody's fucking winning here. Nobody's winning.
No, no. Yeah. I mean, the number one job of the president is to unite the country. And we have the exact opposite going on, because we've never had someone in office like this before. Even with more conservative Republican presidents who have been in office, if you want to know what a true conservative Republican representative looks like, talk to Liz Cheney, okay,
Hmm.
who has completely denounced Trump and Trumpism.
Yes.
Okay. So this is not American. What is going on is not American democracy. It is not freedom for everyone who is on US soil. It is not what our forefathers originally wrote in the Constitution, and it's not what our American soldiers have fought and died for.
No.
So I hear you, Laura, on this. I think what has I've come to finally realize is that when you hear, well, don't talk politics, don't talk politics, it is way beyond politics at this point. We are at a point where we have serious moral issues at stake. People's lives are at stake, people's families are at stake. And the people that are in the most danger are probably about 80% of the country.
Yes.
So anyone who is not white Anglo, conservative, Republican, and Christian or religious is in danger.
And let me ask
And
you a question, okay?
mhm,
Because there is definitely some resentment from sides, especially the people that like to say you don't cut people off because of politics. This isn't political. I'm not political. Why are you holding me accountable to this based on how they voted or whatnot is going on? But how do you? I'm asking for an example. Like, I'm not
right.
expecting you to be the authority. Don't worry
No,
about that.
I'm not much of an authority
But
on most
how
things.
do you convey to somebody how and why, how they voted and how they continue to think just is detrimental to you in a way? Like, that's something that I struggle with is because I don't want to point blame on anybody because this is not a blame game by any standpoint. Like, I'm not blaming anybody, but there are some hard facts that are just true. That if, for me, people that continue to support the reign of terror that is currently being
Right.
done to a vast amount of people in the
Yeah.
United States,
The reign of
I mean,
terror is
for the
very,
love of God, they just put zip ties around elderly disabled people
yeah, I saw that.
protesting the Medicaid. I mean, come on. Like, I'm like livid by this. They're literally going in Florida and
Yeah.
deporting foster children. Like, these things are not right.
Yeah.
And
It's an atrocity.
you see, to me, that like that is not political. This to me is moral. And
Very. Hmm.
I mean, I literally have people telling me, no, it's only gang members or and murderers that they're going after,
That's
and
not
it's
true.
not.
Hmm.
And but they say yes it is, and I'm like, but it's not, and I can prove it's not. And then I get yes it is, or then they gaslight me or red herring me or some happy
It's,
horseshit thing. But how do you explain like this is not political, it's completely moral?
well, here's the deal. At this point, I believe that people who still support him, we know who him is. I
Mhm.
don't even like to say the
The
name in
Agent Orange.
Agent Orange is a good yes. They're either living in a totally different reality or they do not want to face that reality, or they want these bad things to happen to everyday people. And maybe it's a combination. And there might be some other explanations, but that's what I see. Certainly not an
Right. Like I
expert.
said, I'm not asking for your expert opinion, just kind of wondering.
That's just kind of thing.
That's all
Yeah.
we can do is talk about
I,
our opinions and our stances and our experiences.
yeah. And thanks. And I really think that a lot of people are still living in alternative realities, and not just one, there's lots of alternative realities people are living in. Um, But when that alternative reality does not match actual reality of what's going on, then we have to evaluate our perspective. And that's why I changed some of my views, because I realized my reality does not match what is going on. I had better make some changes. And I had to admit was wrong, and I've even made some apologies, considering that I was wrong about some things.
So was I. I was hard ass wrong about some things. And
Oh, I was too.
for
Trust me.
me as a white person, and I like to keep saying this because this is where I think I had the biggest hang up was privilege. I did not understand privilege. I had the typical
Yeah.
white response to that, which was
Mhm.
I had to struggle too. Don't tell me I was privileged. Now I completely understand what it means. It doesn't mean that every single thing in my life was I privileged and that there's nobody that had more to me. What it means is that, and within one set of circumstances, did I have more abilities, more choices, more
Opportunity. Right.
options, more opportunities than someone else? Was somebody going to be treated exactly the same as me in every circumstance, like in each, like in this circumstance, in this circumstance, in this
Right.
circumstance? Yes, each person has privilege in some different ways, let's face it. um I mean, if you want to be the most privileged in the country, you just have to be a white man.
Conservative.
Yeah. And pretend to be straight. Yeah. At least pretend to be straight since they're the ones,
Exactly.
tending to,
Mhm.
crash
Yeah.
grinder.
Yeah, exactly. Oh gosh. Anyway, yes. So no, I mean, I'm my situation was a little different in that I had lived in a very racially and culturally diverse area here in San Antonio. Just to kind of give you an idea, my neighborhood is one third white, one third Hispanic, and one third Black. And San Antonio is kind of like that unless you get into the suburbs and that sort of thing. That's the racial demographics of
Hmm.
San Antonio. It's pretty diverse. Not much segregation, at least in the inner loop. But so here's the thing. I realized that I still didn't understand some of my privilege, but I kind of had, I felt like I had an advantage because I had been living in a racially and culturally diverse area. So I did understand some of my privilege before Trump came along. However, my eyes have been open to a lot more of it since over the last decade.
Hmm.
So I really believe that cultural or social awakenings and becoming more progressive and changing views and admitting that we're wrong and all that is a process of growing. And I think everyone's at a different place in those things. But I've come to the conclusion as if my beliefs harm another person, meaning if they were to be acted out and they harmed another person, then I need to seriously reevaluate and change those beliefs. Because the bottom line is, I'm going to follow the golden rule: do unto others as you would have them do unto you. If I would not want that done to me, then I had better evaluate, what my beliefs are and what would happen if those were taken out in action. I even have a little t-shirt and a yard sign and a little magnet that say, let me get it. Hold on. I can't
Okay.
put it
Good.
word for
I'm,
word, but hold on.
uh-huh. I'm right here. Don't worry. I'm not going anywhere.
This little magnet reminds me. This is kind of cute. There's lots of different people,
Uh-huh.
pretty diverse group, and it says, give to every human being every right that you claim for yourself. So I do not want someone to have less rights than I do simply because they have different color skin or they're of different orientation. I want everyone to have the same rights and opportunities that I have, and not just what I have, but what my family has.
Now, I want to take that for 1 second and say, that mentality is exactly what when I was trying to process my daughter Ruth coming out as trans and me, because she was 18 at the time, so she was technically an adult. So like I literally had nothing, like I couldn't even talk to doctors or anything about it. It was a vastly different
Mhm.
situation. But one of the things that I had to keep reminding myself is when I was 18, I was married. I very much was very strong in my convictions. I knew who I was. And I would not have wanted somebody to tell me that I didn't love my husband. I would not have wanted somebody to tell me that I shouldn't be doing what I was doing. So, how did I have the right to tell anybody else as
Mhm.
long as they were not hurting anybody? Like,
Exactly.
my daughter was not breaking a law. She was not hurting somebody. She was not taking rights away from somebody else. She was not taking free will away from another human being. Then, if my child is going to be happier, mentally healthier, physically healthier, and find joy in life, who the hell am I to tell my child how to do that?
Right. That's what true freedom and democracy are all about. That's what American democracy should be about, or the sovereignty of any country who seeks a democracy, is that everyone should be treated equally, as our Constitution says, and have the right to life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness, as our Constitution says. And that's not what we're seeing.
No, it's not. And
And we're seeing it in a very overt, a very brutal, and even violent ways, how people's rights are being stripped, and some people have more rights than others. And this is not what America is about.
no, it's not what America is about. Um, my, the person that is on my birth certificate, he was a retired E9 Master Chief Petty Officer in the Navy. My husband served his time in the Air Force. As a matter of fact, in like 1996, he had to go over to Saudi Arabia because of the bombing of the barracks over there, and he had to go move the communication. So I've had my fair share of time, like you said earlier, living in that military environment, but I know what my family members fought for. My
Mm-hmm.
family members fought for my rights, but they also fought for my children's rights. And
Right.
just because my child is transgender does not mean my child shouldn't have the same rights as my non-transgender child. That does not make any sense to me whatsoever.
Well, it's the bottom, it's a matter of humanity, human dignity, human rights, that everyone, because they're human beings, should have the same human rights. That's just basic decency.
And
And
how
that's,
does church, like white Christian nationalism is at
no,
the foundation of this, right? So
yeah,
how does a church preach not to be humanitarianism, being humanitarian? Like, I thought that was the entire point of church. What would Jesus do? Jesus would not be putting immigrant children in prisons. They
right,
just wouldn't.
exactly.
They
No.
wouldn't be taking 5 year
Well,
olds or whatever off their cancer saving treatments and deporting them. Like it wouldn't be happening. Jesus would not do that.
well, what we have in the United States, and unfortunately, there is a long history of this in just organized religion in general, that there's always a right wing, typical, I wouldn't say always, but a lot of the times there's a right wing element to organized religion, which I totally denounce. I'm not saying I denounce all conservatives, but I'm just saying the ideology that goes behind it, that we are going to rule over a nation, or they're going to rule over a group of people, instead of meeting them where they're at and making their lives better. Okay. And the way we make their lives better is we give them autonomy in their decision making. It's not like religion is supposed to be rooted in justice, mercy, love, compassion, and charity. And I would say that is true for any major world religion, that is front and center to every major world religion that I know of, that those are key principles. But our world has a history of a certain right wing element trying to take over, and make it political, and get wrapped up with the right wing of the government to mandate things over the nation and take away its democracy. And we have that going on in Israel. We have that going on in other countries too. Like there's a Hindu nationalist group that's trying to take over India. It's a right wing element of Hinduism. And I would say the majority of religious people in the world do not want this. We do not want our religious faith being wrapped up with the right wing of the government imposing terror on most of a country, because they do not subscribe to a certain creed and a certain way of life. That's not what American democracy is. American democracy is everyone lives in peace and is able to practice their way of life and live their best life, with that personal autonomy to make those decisions. And we have a right wing element that is not only strong, but has way too much power, way too much money. And they're wrapped up with a lot of millionaires and billionaires in this country trying to implement all kinds of heinous things.
See,
Um, on of those of us who are not that.
See, and that's the thing. I where I struggle, and this is where I just my brain almost wants to explode, is when once again I can look at people who I know are good-hearted people. Like I feel like I know how good they are. Like I said, like I used
Yeah,
to like almost idolize them. They were my mentors.
right.
And seeing them just being so blinded by what's truly going on. That
Hmm.
I think is the part that's the hardest for me, is the fact that they can't see just by look opening their eyes and looking, because that's all you'd have to do is open your eyes and look
Well,
anywhere,
mhm,
honestly, other than Fox News or Newsmax. Just saying,
exactly.
as long as you didn't look at Fox News or Newsmax, you probably are going to hear the truth of some sort.
If you just look at in a community that's not an all white community, if you just look at in communities that are maybe racially diverse, just a diverse big city community, you will see the truth of what's going on. Because when reality matches what the news story says, then the news story is correct. And I think that there's a lot of willful or chosen ignorance going on. Like, I want my reality to be the truth. Therefore, I am denying what is actually going on, what is actually happening to 80+% of the country. I'm going to ignore it because my privilege has not been threatened. Therefore, it's not me. And that is serious because there's going to be no one left. There's a little poem, and I can't remember it off the top of my head, but they say the first they came
Oh yeah,
for.
first they came for the immigrants and I did nothing. Then they came from the LGBT crew, I did nothing. Then they came for the women and I did nothing. Yes, and that's exactly. Eventually,
And that's their attitude. And that is not what a decent person does not, well, a person of goodwill who truly cares about others and is willing to, but also willing to face reality, which is a hard thing to do right now. It is a hard thing to do. So I know that there's decent people who are either not able or not willing to face what is going on. And I understand that. Okay. And I empathize with your lament over not being able to help people see what's going on. Um, but they're willing to face reality, not and question their beliefs and question their reality. It is a brutal awakening. I'm going to tell you. For me, it was brutal. I think it was hard for you too.
yeah.
But
Oh yeah.
if we sit silent and we understand what is going on, we have a pretty good idea that
Oh
we
yeah,
have.
it's very easy to see what's going on, not for nothing.
Yeah, we have pretty much
We're in a constitutional crisis if
fascism.
anybody hasn't noticed.
Yeah, we're in a
Well, we're,
constitutional
when
crisis.
we're starting, when the Supreme Court says no, we don't have to hold birthright citizenship injunctions for like we're not even going there. Now, let's just be clear. They thought it was okay that not everybody that went to college was allowed to get their student debt canceled. That they could do a nationwide injunction on that. However, birthright citizenship that's written into the Constitution, no, you're not allowed to do that. See, that's where the
Yeah,
hypocrisy just like
we're definitely in a constitutional crisis. Yeah, we're definitely in a constitutional crisis. And I think anyone who is not living in a completely alternative reality understands that that is what is going on. That we have a real and true threat of fascism from within our country, trying to completely take over. I don't think they have fully succeeded yet, but they're too close
they're
to
very close. And if and I know now I believe that you went out and protested for No King's Day.
I did. I've actually protested 4 times now. So
Nice.
yeah, not just once.
Congrats.
I
Yay!
and for me, from my background, oh my goodness. I mean, that is less like, but here's the deal. Oh, that's so
By the
sweet.
way, it's right over here next to me. I thought
Uh,
I'd show it to you.
Oh yeah, I have one of those. I sent one of those to Laura thanking her for, anyway, that was
Yep,
just a
that's
little
the one
leave
she
the
sent
same
me.
thing. But here's the thing, it is to have a really good idea of what's going on. Maybe not, I'm still like opening my eyes more and more every day. So I still maybe not 100% fully
Mhm.
know what's going on, but I have a really pretty good idea. And so do you, and so does most of the country. If we sit silent, that speaks pretty loudly and it's
Yes.
very serious.
The silence screams louder than words.
It does much, yeah. And I know it takes some guts to speak out. I know that both Laura and I have received a variety of threats and backlash for speaking
Hmm.
out. But here's the deal. I want to be able to rest, and for my children and grandchildren, their generation, I want them to know that I did what I could. And and I did what I knew what was right, because it is not right to sit silent right now. It is shameful
Yeah.
to, and I say this for those that have a pretty full grasp of what's going on, and they don't say that any of this is wrong, is so wrong.
And it's important to know, even with my health issues, I figure out a way. That might have been all I did was be able to go protest that weekend because that's where my health was allowed me to be.
Right.
Um,
And you did
However,
right.
protesting is not the only way. And I want to make
That's
that
right.
clear for everybody. People can use the app Five Calls, where it literally gives you the exact script. It gives you the phone number to call, and you're calling your Congress people.
I've done that a
That is
bunch.
hugely important.
Yeah.
Sharing factual, factual information on
Yep.
social media. You can go
Mhm.
to a place like snoops.com and actually look and see, is this actual and factual? And you know what? I have been guilty myself of getting so emotionally
Yeah.
invested in something that I've shared an article and it wasn't factual.
Yeah.
And I do my best. And
Oh,
it's
I'm
it's
guilty of
shitty.
it.
It is shitty to say, God, I was wrong. But you know what? If I if I'm not willing to admit when I was wrong, how do I expect other people to do it?
Exactly. And we're all wrong at one time or another. It's not,
Yes.
none of us are perfect.
No.
I don't know of a single person that's shared actual and factual information every single time.
Right.
I think we're all guilty at one point or another. We're not, but uh, just out of basic decency, we should be striving to share actual and factual information.
Hmm.
Okay, because honesty and integrity are very important, and they should be to anyone of goodwill. And so anyway, Laura, I hear you on all of this. It's been brutal to try to explain to people who I want to wake up. Um, there is a group I saw the other day. Let me look it up real quick because I don't want to forget to mention it. But there is a group that caters to people who are waking up out of MAGA, and I
Ooh.
really, really appreciate it. I I should have written it down before we got on the air, but let me see if I can
Oh,
find
no
it.
worries.
I think it's called Leaving MAGA. And this MAGA movement is nothing shy of yeah, it's called Leaving MAGA by Rich Logus. Okay.
Hmm.
Yeah. And he is a former MAGA um, activist, actually, that woke.
Oh, nice.
Mhm. And so he understands people as they're waking up. We need to welcome people who wake up and go, oh my goodness, we're living in a variation of Nazi Germany. Even though it's not that, they realize we're living in a fascist time.
Hmm.
This is not America. This is not what our country's about. Um, and it gives them a safe space to wake up and process, getting out of that. And I strongly recommend that if people are starting to wake up, highly recommend leaving MAGA. And there's other groups that I know of, but I think that has been the one I probably have the most amount of respect for, because it caters to just about anyone who's trying to
And I
start to make
really,
that.
I implore everybody because, my friend, no, my friend, sorry, I looked down at my phone. My friend Robin is texting me as we're doing this. So sorry,
Oh,
I looked down at
okay.
that and that caught me
That's
off guard.
okay. Yeah.
During COVID, that is when John and I kind of started bumping heads a little bit,
Mhm.
with what was going on. That's when I noticed that, oh God, I was starting to definitely lean a different way. And he was still kind of like over here on the conservative ledge. And COVID and how the great Agent Orange handled COVID, as me as a nurse, I was devastated by the way that was being handled. I mean,
Yeah,
just
yeah,
flabbergasted
yeah, yeah.
completely. Um, but that is like where what really started waking me up. But we had to agree to only listen and watch the BBC. So the easiest thing for people to do right now is to just not watch American news. Don't watch American news right now. If you don't trust CNN, you don't trust Fox News, you don't trust MSNBC, you don't trust whatever, whichever side you don't trust, then watch BBC. Just watch BBC because they don't have a dog in this fight over here. They're going to tell you what's actually going on. Now, do I think what is that? The Midas Touch Network is absolutely amazing. And also Aaron Parnas, I think
No,
is
no, they're
wonderful.
great.
But
They're
if
great.
you don't want to watch American things because you think it's still going to be, polarized, BBC. I mean, that could be your little icebreaker. I literally begged my parents to only watch BBC for 30 days. Didn't
Well,
work.
here's a good way to tell
I hope
what
it
is
does one
going.
day because I'd love to really
I
be
know.
close with my parents again.
I understand. I hear you. I'm in a very similar situation. What I would recommend is look at what other prime ministers in other countries are saying, other free nations, the European Union,
The Pope?
the, the Pope, the Prime Minister of Canada. Look and see what they're saying about the United States. That is a brutal wake up call. A
Yes.
brutal because if you're when you combine what other leaders of other countries are saying about the United States and who's saying it. I mean, when Russia is praising Trump, there's a problem.
Yeah. Oh my
When
God.
Vladimir Putin is praising what Trump is doing, that's a problem. Okay. So
That's
if
a
you
glaring problem.
Mhm. So if you see that our allies are in conflict with us and our historic adversaries are cozying up to us, something is wrong. And then you compare that to what is going on in communities that are not all white or not predominantly white, and you compare that to what is going on over there, you can actually do that without watching the news.
Yes. One thing that was very a change for us when John and I moved this last time.
Uh-huh.
When we bought our house, one of the things we did is we drove through all the neighborhoods and we looked for an ethnically diverse community.
I
We had
like
never done that before. We'd always lived in very, I'm going to say, white, upper class, middle class, up upper middle class white neighborhoods. There we go. That's like
that.
we always lived in suburbia, and like there was always a handful of black and maybe Hispanic people in the neighborhood, but it was Whitey McWhiterson all around. So when we moved specifically, we moved to where it is a much more diverse neighborhood because that is something I very much wanted and I wanted to be a part
I'm
of.
proud of you. I'm proud of you for that.
And it's these little things and realizing it and actually seeing it. And it's hard. And I'm not going to tell anybody it's not hard to look in the mirror and say, gosh, I was wrong. But I promise you right now, if you just were ever to say, listen, I was duped. I didn't see it. My eyes were covered. I was so involved in it. I just didn't understand. Even the words I didn't understand until now. I'm
That's
sorry.
beautiful.
I
That is
didn't understand until now. That's
That
all
is,
anybody needs. They don't need you to say, give a 2-page dissertation on why you regret your vote, but you can say, I didn't see it. My eyes are open now.
mhm. And
I
that's what
can't
groups
make
like
you be better
Leading
before,
MAGA.
just like I can't fix any of the shit I did before when I was in that world. But what I can do now is say, I had to look in the mirror. It was not easy, but it has been the best decision of my life. I've gotten to meet people like Julie. I've gotten to meet people
Oh,
like, there's so many wonderful people I get to
oh,
have in
sweet.
my life who bring me intersectionality and I learn from, and they broaden my horizon. And the biggest thing to know is it's not like a one and done. It's not like I looked in the mirror one day and I put my makeup on, and for the rest of my life, my makeup's going to be perfect. It's just like that. Every day I have to wake in the mirror and I have to look at myself and say, oh shit, that doesn't look so good. How do I fix this now? Oh, how do I
Yeah.
fix this now? Oop, my privilege is showing. Let me pack that bitch up, and really, really look
I
at
love
it.
you for that. Laura, I think it's wonderful that you are open to continuous growth
It's
and
not easy.
changes and evolving. And that's I've promised myself that I'm always going to be open to continuous growth and change. Ever since my huge wake up call, it was probably about, well, I started waking up when Trump mocked the disabled reporter, considering I'm a disability
Specialist.
practitioner, um, but I really didn't, it really didn't all start unraveling for me until probably about a year before COVID. And that's when it really, really started. But usually it's there's usually a big wake up call, and then there's this continuous refining
Yep. And that's exactly what
that
mine
goes
was.
on after that.
It was,
And so yeah, and it's been rough. I'm not going to deny it, but I am now the first to admit when I'm wrong, and I've tried to do that, but I realize I'm doing it a lot more now. Um, I am not, the only thing I'm strong in my conviction about is loving my neighbors myself. That's it. That's the only thing that I know at this point. That is it, loving my neighbors myself and wanting for my neighbor what I would want for my own family, like
see, and
justice.
that's the thing. I think I don't agree with the people that have racist, bigoted opinions. However, do I feel that they have every right to have those opinions? Yes, as long as they're not treading on my rights or on my family's rights. So you can have that opinion. Nobody's telling you not to have that opinion necessarily. It's trying to explain you can hold your opinion, I can hold my opinion, and we can hold space for each other and we can both coexist. And if you don't want to be transgender, don't transition. If you
Yeah,
don't want to be in a gay marriage, don't accept a gay, what do you call
proposal.
that? Proposal. Like
Yeah.
some things are super easy. Let's just be honest with it. There's
Mhm.
other things that if it's not hurting you, I know we gotta wrap this up, but one of the
That's
things
okay.
I'm just gonna end with is one of the things that me fighting for rights for my trans child, one of the things that I found the most frustrating is in Florida, we have these people that protest for parents to, for parents' rights and parents' choice. They seem to forget that I'm a parent and I'm supposed to be able to have that for my child as well. Like it's all
Mhm.
about their choice, but that's your choice for your child. You want your parent choice, yes? Yes. Well, so do I. Why do you think your parent choice outweighs my parent choice? Like I'm not
That's
trying to parent your child. I don't care to parent your child. I don't want any more children. My two are enough. However,
well,
I got mine. I took care of mine. You take care of yours.
they don't have, no one has, I mean, my understanding of pro-choice has really expanded
Oh yeah,
that understanding. No one should be in someone else's medical exam room for
that's right.
any reason. The government, the church, no one has the right to be in someone else's exam room and get between a patient and a doctor.
Correct.
That should be totally left. And here's the thing, medical decisions that are made should be based off of science and facts and years of practice, the medical practice. And when I'll just give you an example, when every major medical association in the United States says that um, hormone replacement therapy and puberty blockers can save a transgender person's life, then the parents are the ones, and or the patient has the right to make that decision, and no one should be infringing on that. That is an American ideal. And I do not, my understanding of pro-choice has really expanded way beyond, I am pro-choice in every regard. And here's the reason, because whoever was trying to morally weaponize this or force a certain set of dogma on the country, well, they've lost, in my opinion, they have lost all moral authority to have any kind of interaction with forming civil law, because they have abused it.
Mm-hmm.
And we have to go back to the basics of the American Constitution. And I say that as a person who does struggle to practice the faith. That is the truth right there.
And
I
I so
struggle.
respect you for it. I
I
so respect
appreciate that.
you for your faith.
Well, I appreciate that. And I'm going to tell you right now, Laura, I struggle right now because of and I'm just going to say it out loud here, what the Texas Catholic Church is doing regarding LGBTQ, particularly transgender rights, and weaponizing the abortion issue, anti-abortion extremism that they've been involved with for way too long. My husband and I kind of had to reevaluate, and we've kind of taken refuge in a fully affirming, even trans affirming church downtown
That
with
is
people that we've
wonderful.
known a long time, because I cannot live with how they're weaponizing religious dogma into civil law and destroying people's families and people's lives. I cannot live with that. And they may not know that they're doing that, but they're doing that. And they've been doing it a long time. Now, they're doing a lot of other things right. Like the Catholic Church is doing an amazing job with migrants and helping them find refuge and asylum.
But that doesn't negate this other part.
It
And
doesn't
that's a
negate.
very big point for everybody to understand. You can be a good person, but if you're voting for people that are putting laws in place that are harming other people, you're
Mhm.
not acting out that good person that you claim to be,
Right.
because you're saying you don't support those laws, but you're literally voting for the people that are implementing those laws. If you didn't vote for those people and those people did not get put in office, where would those laws be put in
We
place?
would we
If
wouldn't have this going on.
not, that is called action and consequences. So if you
Mhm.
didn't vote for them, then that wouldn't happen.
Well, and I think I'm going to take it one step further, Laura, because
Please
I
do.
think I think that people had different intentions, different reasons that they voted for either any political candidate. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
But when those are intentions, like I voted with the intention to roll back DEI
Mm-hmm.
rights, I voted with the intention to hurt LGBTQ people. I voted with the intention to make this an all white country again and ship out everyone who's not white. There are people who voted with those intentions, even though they may not have said them out loud. They may have voted for one or more of those
But how is
with the
that any
intent to
different
hurt.
than knowing that's what is going to happen and still being okay with voting for it? That's still saying you're
I
okay with it.
it is to a degree. I do think that there were some people who were in denial that those things would actually happen. You know, there's this I told you so kind of moment where we tried to tell people that this is what
Mhm.
would happen and they did not listen. That was very frustrating for me. But I do know a small number of people who wanted harm on minorities, and it is almost impossible. I can't reconcile it. I cannot
Mm.
reconcile that. I have more forgiveness for people who I thought that Trump would lower grocery prices. I mean, that's a very like one-dimensional reason to vote for Trump. They may have had other reasons they didn't speak out loud. But I'm more forgiving of those who didn't want to intentionally harm other people, or that they believed with all their heart that he wouldn't do these horrible things. They voted for him anyway and maybe internally regret their vote. I have more compassion about those people, but I don't have as much
I
compassion of those who are intentionally wanting harm.
I will have more intent, compassion for the people that we just spoke about that did not do it with the intent of anybody being harmed when they come out and admit that backfired.
Yes. And
Until they can
actually,
admit it and say,
I think I agree with you to a very large degree on that, because the fact that they haven't admitted anything yet is deeply concerning. Like
that
at this point, with everything going on, with the kinds of deportations, the very cruel
the people
and
dying in ICE
barbaric,
custody right now.
yeah, the cruel and barbaric types of deportations, like children with cancer being deported,
Mhm.
people being kidnapped
Yes.
off of the streets with no due process, being deported. Those kinds of horrific things are just a small, tiny example of all the crazy
Mhm.
things going on. The fact that they will not admit that that is wrong, to me, says then that they maybe had some intentions that were maybe not good.
See, that's my problem. And that's the part
Yeah,
that if you
you
can't
can't
admit that it's
reconcile.
wrong, this is where I like, how can you not admit that it's wrong?
I can't reconcile that. I cannot reconcile that these kinds of things are happening and there are people who voted for Trump and they will still not admit it's wrong. Now, do some of them choose to live in an alternative reality? Say, oh, that's not happening. They're
Right.
only deporting the hard criminals. Okay,
Yes.
well, here's the deal. I don't care who it is. I don't care what kind of crimes they've done. Deporting someone and sending them to an El Salvadorian or Libyan prison without due process is a crime within itself,
Yes.
because that's not the way our system of laws
Correct.
works. So, but the thing is that that's not the case. There are way too many people who have been kidnapped,
Yes.
falsely arrested by ICE, and deported and sent to either a heinous prison. I call it a concentration camp because they're being sent there to die.
It is. That's what it
Yeah.
is. They're
They're being,
inhumane conditions in the detention centers in Texas right now. And
yeah,
they're trying to do an
yeah,
alligator alley one here in Florida. So
yeah.
alligator, what is
We've
they calling
got
that? Alligator Alcatraz?
I know one at least in Texas. There's probably a few more that we don't know about that are kind of under the radar. But the bottom line is that this is happening and people are not saying that this is wrong. That is wrong. Okay.
That
And that I cannot reconcile. If they really know what's going on and they're not saying it's wrong, I cannot reconcile that. So to me, that is probably the equivalent of wanting harm on others to begin with.
See, and this is why I love talking with you because we can talk about it in different contexts and try to figure it out together
Yeah.
where we were before and where we are now and why it helps me understand my feelings when I can talk it out with somebody.
Oh, that's
So
so sweet, Laura. Well, here's
I,
the deal. I'm starting to lose patience. That's the bottom line. I'm losing patience with those who think that all of this is okay.
yep,
I'm losing serious patience. And I want to be like this role model, this leaving MAGA role model, but maybe I'm just not as patient as this man who, came out and started this wonderful,
Mm,
organization to help people when they're coming out. The last thing I want to do when someone wakes up is scold them
right.
for finally waking up so late, because I know what it's like to wake up. Laura knows what it's like to wake up,
Yes.
and we need to have patience with people. But if people are not waking up now, something's wrong. Something is dreadfully wrong, because it is way past the point of being politics. We're talking serious moral issues that are destroying most of the country.
Yeah, we are
So
talking
to not
about
admit it at this point is, yeah,
a constitutional and a humanitarian crisis, quite honestly.
yes, constitutional and humanitarian. Both are, it's on the forefront.
It's
It's
happening
not
at the
under the radar
same
anymore.
time, and that's why everybody is so overwhelmed. I know I get overwhelmed, definitely, and it can be very difficult. And I know we're going to wrap up the show. I could talk to Julie for
I
hours
love you,
and
Laura.
hours and hours on end. And
I
you can
know. I
tell
just
that because
love,
this is the fourth time she's on the show.
I love you. And I agree with you. I agree with you on that last point. The people who are still not awake at this point, something's wrong. I mean,
And
there's something.
all
Yeah.
anybody that still hasn't woken up yet or hasn't been able to pull open your eyes, all you have to do is say, I was wrong. I was wrong.
Yeah,
That's it.
exactly.
We're not
Exactly.
asking you to build a time machine and go back. I can't go back to 2016. Trust me, I wish I could, because if Doctor Who poured it down right now, I know exactly what I'd go back to. Let me just tell you.
Oh, I'm Laura, I'm telling you, my eyes open later, like
Yeah.
about a year
Yeah.
before COVID. I mean, I know people who had their eyes open 30 years ago
Yeah.
to this to
Exactly.
that. And
Exactly.
so
So,
they were much more in tune
yes.
and could see the injustice way before I did.
Me
And
too. Me too. And
so,
that's
I admire those
they
people.
gave me grace and I'm going to give other people grace. I
Yeah,
just need to see
yeah,
effort. But
yeah.
Julie, thank
Effort.
you so much for
Love you,
joining
Laura.
us today.
You're
And tell
awesome.
everybody, don't forget, if you live your life out loud, you are going to inspire other people to do the same. Until next time, don't forget to Life doesn't always
LOL.
allow us to laugh out loud, but we always have the choice to live our lives out loud. So until next time, don't forget to LOL, live out loud.